Historically, the spring market is the most busy when it comes to Toronto real estate. However, does that mean we're as business as usual? We're getting to the spring market now, but we're in a different shift in market. What's changed? Are we going to see the same stuff going on? What am I seeing in the Toronto real estate market? Stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Gabriele Battista. Homes into Reality, talking about the Toronto real estate market every single week. I'm a local real estate agent in the Toronto area who's very passionate about first-time buyers. My brand's about first-time buyers. My goal every single week is to talk about being a first-time buyer in the Toronto real estate market. So my goal is to educate, inform, keep you updated on the real estate market every single week. So when you're ready to make that first big purchase in the Toronto real estate market, it can be a confident one and you can do something with a lot of joy. So if that sounds something you'd be interested in, stay a while. I've got a ton of content for you every single week. Subscribe, give me a comment, give me a like. I'm happy to keep bringing this content to you. I also have weekly content on Instagram every single Wednesday, talking about being a first-time buyer in Toronto. I also have a weekly newsletter every Tuesday that goes out, all of it talking about being a Toronto first-time buyer. So I have a ton of content. There's maybe too much content, but there's never too much content. Look in the bio, sign up, and stay tuned for the video. Enough of me, let's talk about what I'm seeing in the Toronto real estate market right now. Leading up to the spring market, we typically see a big uptick in activity. More buyers are getting ready to buy in the Toronto real estate market. We're seeing more listings come in the market with the lows of January being really, limited amount of inventory. We're seeing a ton more inventory come in the market February, March, April. So we see more people out there, more people looking, more offers out there, more showings. It's the busiest time of year when it comes to the Toronto real estate market being the spring. And how does it feel this year? And I'll be honest with you, it feels a little bit different. Not that I don't have buyers on the go. Buyers are still interested. We're getting ready for the spring market and more listings come out. There are buyers out there, don't get me wrong, but you definitely don't have the same volume and the same motivation that many people had in past years where it was absolutely crazy and it was a frenzy for 3-4 months. And as an example, we can look at January. And January in no way is your biggest peak month when it comes to sales, but you're looking at a comparison to 2021 and 2022. We'll throw a graph up over here. We have some pretty significant lows. We're looking at 50% down for even last year's volume. So the amount of people actively transacting is much lower than it was last year and the year before that. There's obviously reasons why this is going on. The biggest thing, which is the big elephant in the room, your interest rates, affordability is much lower than it was this time last year and years before that. So when the interest rate's low, it's much easier for people to buy record numbers. And then obviously buyer sentiment's down after seeing a really big drop in 2022. People aren't as confident in the Toronto real estate market as in years past. But you know what? We're not going to go in detail about these things in the videos. I actually talked about these a ton in the past videos. We're actually going to talk about where these buyers are going and what I call the tale of two markets. Because like I said, I have buyers on the go. I know other people have buyers on the go. Buyers are still interested in Toronto real estate. People still got to move. They still got to live. Where are these buyers going is the real question. And I kind of call it the tale of two markets. There's a markets of properties that are going to the market in the busy spring market and are getting activity, getting showings, getting offers, and are selling pretty quickly versus properties that are going to the market and are essentially stale and they're not moving at all. So we're going to explore that in this video today. And to analyze the market a little bit better, we're going to use a big sample. And the sample is going to be in the biggest Toronto condo market, be the downtown core, Toronto CO1, which is essentially your Toronto downtown hub. And you have a bunch of different, actually a lot of different Toronto neighborhoods there. So it's the best sample that we can look at. But we're filming this video in mid-February. It's actually on Family Day we're filming this video. Since February 1st, we've had 105 sold in that neighborhood, capped at $1 million for the entry-level price point, we'll say, even though $1 million isn't really your entry-level price point. It's capped at $1 million. We've had 105 sales since February 1st in CO1. And just for a little bit of context, the amount of active listings on this day right now in Toronto CO1 is 711 properties. So again, it's not a great month-to-month comparison, but out of all the properties that are sold so far, 105, there have been 711 listings that were available just in that particular neighborhood. So to call the tale of two markets, we got to break it down somehow and in two ways. The first way being, I'm going to break it down to anything that's sold in 10 days or less. So out of the 105 properties that sold since February 1st, in CO1, we're looking at 43 of those properties sold in 10 days or less. So I picked out of the list of 43, I picked out 3 random properties. I'll put them over here to take a look. They all had a couple things in common. They were well priced to a certain extent. They were priced, relatively well. They're not overpriced. They had great photos, good marketing. You're looking through these things, you want to go see these properties just from looking at the photos. And then lastly, if you look at the sold to list price, you're actually getting a relatively close sold price compared to the list price. There's one example too you'll see that is slightly under, but they're all relatively close. When I pulled up the average of all these properties now, I'm seeing that the average sold to list ratio is 102%. So they're typically getting 2% over the asking price of the property. And the overall strategy is that I'm seeing for a lot of these listings, at least the ones that are 10 days or less, is a lot of offers anytime. And that's the predominant strategy nowadays. In the spring, that's one big key difference. In the spring last year, everything was offer dates. You would have 4 or 5 days to let people see the property, and then everyone would bid on the property on the same day. And it got very aggressive, and that's really what skewed up numbers. But you're not seeing that strategy anymore because the buyer demand's not there. Most of the time, they're offers anytime. They're at a very competitive price point. You're seeing that they're being sold at either at the list price or very nearby the list price. And because the photos are good, people want to see the property shows well online, people are seeing it online. Most of the time, they'll go see the property right away, they'll put in an offer, and they'll get the property. It's not as much of a lineup to get the property compared to what it was last year. A lot of these properties are also still selling conditionally. So these are the hottest properties out of the 105, but they're still selling conditionally, maybe on a status or financing, and they're firming up, which is really important to note because we're not, waiving conditions that are not needed. There still isn't that amount of buyer activity where you have to waive all your conditions. You can be a little bit more cautious as a first-time buyer. But that big number to me is 102% over asking. And it's not a ton over asking, to be honest with you, especially if you look at past markets, we saw 110, 105, it's really big numbers over asking. But it shows enough that there's the properties that are selling quickly are really well priced, really well marketed to the point where they're not getting undercut by other buyers. It's not basically a fire sale to get these properties, at least when we look at these particular properties, this side of the tail. Now, when we look at the other side of the market, any properties that sold in 11 days or more in the CO1 area, we're looking at, instead of 105, you're looking at 68 properties of the 105 being sold. So the majority of these properties that are selling from February are being sold 10 days or more. And the interesting thing to note when we're looking at these examples is if we just get, we think 11 days or more. 11 days actually isn't a long time to be on the real estate market. It's actually relatively quick still. But if I get the average of all these 68 properties, the average days on market is 37 days on market that these properties are staying. So maybe there are some that are selling in 10 days, 12 days, 15 days. But there's also some selling in 100 days, in 60 days, in 90 days. So it very skews the numbers. There are a lot of properties that are sitting in the market and staying on the market when it comes to these types of properties. So the first thing that when I'm going through all the samples, I'm looking at overall listing photos. And I'm getting a healthy mix. Like again, some of these are still very well staged, very well marketed, and they're selling with, let's say, within 15 days or 2 weeks. But there's also a lot of properties here that are selling in much more time. And they have cell phone cameras that are taking these photos, or it's really poor quality photos, very little marketing, or no marketing at all. So a lot of these properties are selling, let's say in 60 days, 30 days, plus you're looking at much less marketing going on. I'm not motivated to see a property like this. The only reason why I'd be motivated to see a property like this is to get a deal on the property. And some people definitely got a deal on these properties. I'll show up some examples as we speak. But the average list to price ratio that we're getting for these properties, you're looking at 98%, which isn't extremely low, but it's definitely lower than some other properties that we're seeing. For example, the other example being 102%. So we're seeing properties that are on the market a little bit longer, and people can get them for slightly under what they're asking for. And we're also seeing a lot of these properties adjust prices. They'll stay on the market for 15 days, 20 days, they'll lower their price point. They'll stay on the market another 10 days, they'll lower their price point again for expectation. But the fact that these are consistently selling under the asking price after adjustment is really, really important. The good news for these properties is they're actually still selling. And that's the most important thing. These condos, need to be sold. The seller wants to get rid of them. They want to sell them off, and they're getting sold. So that's good news. But mentioning before, when there's 711 it was, 711 active listings in that condo market, that's showing that, out of all the properties selling 105 versus 700, that's about 1 in 7 properties are actually selling. And it's not maybe an exact number, but it's showing you for every, condo that's getting sold, there's maybe 5 condos out there that haven't been sold yet. So it's showing that there's more active inventory than what's actually available. They're actually on the lucky ends that actually get sold. And the ones that are not selling, they may just be very much overpriced. They're not adjusting their prices. The ones that are getting sold, they're only at 98% because they're adjusting their prices lower as they see the expectation and the buyer activity is not there. But the properties that are not selling, if I go through it, on a different sample, you'll see very poor marketing, very poor pricing strategy, and those properties are in a third market because they're not even getting sold. They're just sitting in the market, and they're becoming very, maybe not replacement level, but they're at the point where people don't give them any attention because there's so much out there. They can choose 5 different properties to see and pick one to buy. There's one graph that I want to use here. I think it shows the situation really, really well. It's from Rob Marsiglio. He has a lot of good information when it comes to stats and graphs and shows off the Toronto real estate market well. I use this stuff all the time, but I'm going to show it over here. Shout out, Rob. But you look at the Toronto condo market, there's a couple of things we look at this graph. And the first thing that I noticed right away is there's a ton more Toronto condos than any other supply. And that makes sense. There's a ton more condos than there are freehold properties. That's going to make sense for sure. But the key number that I'm also looking at is that 60% of the current active inventory for the Toronto condo market has been on the market for 30 days or more. And before, with our case study, a lot of these properties, I imagine, are probably overpriced. They're probably not marketed very well, and they probably are not getting a ton of traction when it comes to buyers. And because sales are so low in the Toronto market, there definitely aren't enough buyers to go around for these listings. So a lot of these listings are going to become stale. They're not as competitive when it comes to the ones that are selling within a week. You'll find that the best exposure a property can get when it goes in the market is in the first 2 weeks, or even the first, like I said, 10 days. Tale of two markets. Properties sell really quickly in the first 7 days, or they take much longer to sell in general. Or the third market, they don't sell at all. So a lot of rambling that I'm doing right now, and I think it's good for good reason. And the question I asked in the beginning is it going to be the same spring market as we saw in the past? And the answer I probably have is I don't think so. The amount of inventory right now on the Toronto condo market and all markets in general is much higher than it was in past years. The buyer amount is much lower than the active inventory. I don't see there being as much of a frenzy, a craziness when it comes to properties that don't get sold within the first 10 days. Because we're seeing the properties that get sold within the first 10 days are still going. They're going well. They're getting marketed properly. They're unique, interesting layouts. People want to buy those properties. But the moment they're not sold afterwards, they're definitely becoming more stale and they're not getting that same interest as, let's say, last year. So my takeaway for first-time buyers, there's a few of them. There's not as much urgency in the market, which gives you guys the opportunity as first-time buyers to do a little bit more research, a little bit more looking at properties, and not feel pushed to jump at a property right away. With that being said, a key thing to look at is the quality. Let's see the tail of the first properties we talked about. There are a lot of properties still selling in the first 10 days. And on those properties, we're not seeing major discounts of the value. It's not a situation where a property is listed at $800,000, we can get it for $750,000. We're probably getting it near or close to what the asking price is. And that's important to know because if we see high quality listings, we're usually looking at around that asking price point. The major discounts or the major below asking price points are the properties that have been stale on the market for 30 plus days. And there might still be some great properties in that bunch. I'd be shocked if there wasn't. But when it comes to getting, let's say, a little bit more of a discount on these properties, you're seeing it more in the properties on the market 10 plus days versus the properties less than 10 days. And I gotta say, I'm really excited for the spring market. And not the sense that, we're gonna see big shifts in prices. It's the fact that with my first time buyer clients, I can actually slow down and really look at different options with them. We don't need to look at every single property, put an offer on every single property because there's not that urgency out there. We can look for quality units and put offers on quality units and really find them really great homes. Sometimes I kind of look past on the investment and numbered side. I want to find my clients homes that they're happy with. And I think this market is going to be a great market for people to be a little bit more patient and find a great home for them. Thank you once again for watching this video on Homes into Reality this week. We have videos every single week coming on YouTube, Instagram. We have our weekly newsletter as well every Tuesday. I'm always here to help. If you have any questions about the Toronto real estate market, book a call with me in my description. I'm happy to touch base about your situation. I also have a first-time buyer webinar coming out this Thursday. It might even be today, who knows? But we do monthly first-time buyer webinars for clients getting into the market. I'm rambling a ton today, but with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Talk next week.